Magnum P.I. is an American crime drama series that premiered on CBS on December 11, 1980.
What would you do if the end of your favorite TV show left you not knowing if the hero lived or died? The same thing happened with Magnum P.I., and fans were shocked. We'll talk about the ending that made a lot of people angry in today's show, what went wrong, how it changed the show for good, and how the new season tried to fix those problems. Stick with us. You don't want to miss this. The controversial scene breakdown. At the very end of Season 7 of Magnum P.I., the show took a sudden turn that no one saw coming. Magnum, the well-liked private detective, is seriously hurt after an ordeal that put his life in danger. In a hospital bed, he's fighting for his life with a bullet wound that could end everything. Magnum is shown in a sleep, on the edge of life and death, in what would become one of the most controversial scenes in TV history. This isn't your usual cliffhanger where the hero just barely avoids danger. That wasn't it. This was deeper and scarier. In this episode, Magnum's life is in danger, and while his body is asleep, the story goes into his mind. Friends, his fellow soldiers from the war, the people who knew him best, come to see him. At this point, Magnum's past comes back to haunt him, and he faces the monsters that have been following him around. It's a place of peace, closure, and deep thought. What's wrong? It's not clear if he lives or dies. Fans are shocked by the finish and don't know what will happen next. Was Magnum really gone? Or was he just stuck in a bizarre dream state? It hurt like hell to feel like there was no clear answer. Fans were expecting a strong finale, but instead, they were left with a sea of doubt. This is not the kind of ending anyone wanted from a show that had captivated viewers for 8 years. The creators wanted to leave things open, so there could be a return, or even a sad farewell, that would make the story feel full. Instead, they turned off their viewers by making them feel afraid. No replies, just some questions. Everything about the show changes right now. The show Magnum P.I. has always been known for its action, fun, and close friendships. But now that Magnum's life is in danger, the stakes feel higher. Fans didn't just want to know if Magnum would make it. They wanted the story to end. They were ready for the hero they had cheered for through good times and bad, to finally get the send-off he earned. Instead, the confusion made people angrier. The season didn't end with that shocking scene. It set the stage for Season 8 to be rough and confusing. Because of the negative feedback and huge number of requests for answers, CBS chose to bring the show back for a second season. But how were they going to fix what was broken? The comeback that came next was strange and disjointed, and it was not a clean ending. As Season 8 of the show stumbled along, Magnum was brought back, but not without trouble. The first episode of the new season pretty much rewrote what happened in the last episode, suggesting that it may have all been a dream. The whole point of Season 8's first episode was to make it look like Magnum had just been making up his near-death experience, but this made the hole the show had already dug for itself even bigger. It seemed like an easy way out. What was meant to be an emotional goodbye was now treated like a memory that had been forgotten. The plot was rushed, and Magnum P.I. didn't have the magic it used to have. Fans were not only confused by this return, they were also upset and angry about it. The directors thought they could get over the heavy-handed twist, but now they had to deal with something even tougher. How could they ever give fans a real ending? After being almost killed off in such a dramatic way, what was the character supposed to do? What's more, why did they think this unclear finish was the best choice? The producers thought that the lack of clarity would build suspense and keep people wondering, But it backfired. It made a huge gap between the viewers and the people who ran the show that was hard to bridge. The show Magnum P.I. has always been proud of its characters, how they change and grow, and how they bond with each other. At this point, it seemed like those links were breaking down, and everyone was only thinking about one thing: what happened to Magnum? It wasn't over, though. The story of Magnum P.I. didn't end with the show. There would be repercussions throughout the entertainment industry from this controversial scene. It would change the way showrunners thought about endings for good. Let's look more closely at how this shocking turn of events changed not only Magnum P.I., but also TV shows in general. Watch out! Initial shock and confusion. Fans were shocked by what happened in the season end of Magnum P.I. The tough and charming private detective we had hired, Magnum, was in the hospital bed, on the edge of death. Many fans weren't sure if they were watching a cliffhanger or the real end of the show because his future was so uncertain. It was an easy question that everyone had. Was this Magnum's last performance? Or was it all a dream? The first shock happened right away. Fans were scared because they didn't know if the show was over or if there would be more. After all, it wasn't just any episode, it was Magnum P.I., a show that had been a hit for almost 8 years. It was hard for people to understand why the show left the main character's fate so open to so much doubt. They had been pulling for Magnum for so many years. How could they leave his life so uncertain? Social media was on fire with fans complaining about how confused and annoyed they were. A lot of people were talking about this online, wondering if it was a trick, a badly done cliffhanger, or just bad writing. Many fans wrote letters begging for answers and demanding that the show tyranny end the story of a character they had been following for years. A lot of people respected the fans who made Magnum P.I. a hit, so it wasn't just about the show anymore. But in the long run, it really hurt. Fans were shocked by what they saw, and it didn't just go away, it stuck with them. It seemed like a cheap emotional trick to leave Magnum's fate unknown, and it didn't do justice to the years of story. The show didn't seem to want to say goodbye with much emotion. Instead, it seemed more interested in shocking people than in giving Magnum and the fans the closure they needed. Fans were looking for an emotional ending, but they didn't get it. It was a cheap trick that made you feel bad. Fans didn't want any doubt. They wanted things to end. They were ready to say goodbye. The show's image started to suffer as the weeks went by because of this cliffhanger. It felt like bad choices were made with a show that used to be liked and full of action. People started to feel lied to. The show had been funny, exciting, and dramatic in the past, but it wasn't living up to its own reputation at this moment. Fans made it clear that they were unhappy. For many people, Magnum P.I. was more than just another TV show. It was a deeply personal experience. They didn't deserve an empty, unfinished ending. Fans, on the other hand, didn't want the show to end that way. It turned into a campaign after the backlash. There were campaigns by fans calling for Magnum P.I. to get the proper ending it earned. They didn't want a cliffhanger. They wanted a conclusion that showed respect for the characters, the fans, and the show's past. These fans wanted Magnum's story to end, but not in a way that was just for filler. They wanted it to end in a way that gave the show the respect, and ending it deserved. After that, there were a lot of social media groups, petitions, and fan campaigns that tried to get CBS to change the show's direction. They loved Magnum P.I. so much that it was more than just a show to them. It was real to them. Fans weren't ready to let a dull and disappointing ending ruin the show's reputation. It was clear what was meant. Magnum P.I. deserved better. Magnum should have had better. And the fans earned an end. What did CBS do in answer to all the fuss? How did the show get saved from being canceled? Let's look at the unexpected turns that led to Magnum P.I.'s return and see if the show could ever earn back the fans' love. Learn more about how the show tried to fix the problems it made by watching on. The strained relationship between Tom Selleck and CBS. In the later seasons of Magnum P.I., Tom Selleck's growing movie business started to have an effect on the show's direction. He was no longer just a TV star, he was becoming famous in Hollywood. After Magnum P.I. did well, Selleck got parts in a lot of big movies, like the wildly famous 3 Men and a Baby. For him, it was a big step forward, but it meant he couldn't be on the show as much. When you're the main figure on a show like Magnum P.I., people won't be able to ignore your absence. It wasn't just a small problem that Selleck's job had to change, it affected the whole production. Because his movie commitments meant that shooting schedules had to be changed all the time, things got messy behind the scenes. Episodes were late, and the production team had to work quickly to fit his plan. As a result, as if the standard of the show were being lowered, the team had to change how they worked to meet the needs of their star, which slowed down the normally smooth flow of production. Things didn't get better after that, though. There was more pressure on people than just the production team when Tom Selleck turned his attention to his growing movie business. CBS, the network that put on the show, had to make a choice. It was clear that Magnum P.I. would continue to be a hit show, as it was one of the most watched shows on TV. The network didn't want to end a popular show, especially one with a character like Magnum that became so well known. That being said, they had to admit that things were different now. There were signs that it might be time to move on because the show wasn't doing as well as it did in its early years. Because of this stress, CBS had to make some tough choices. The network had to choose whether to allow the show to end properly or try to bring it back with a new direction. It seemed like a good idea to end it because it would let the show go out on a good note and keep its reputation. It took CBS a while to let Magnum P.I. go, though. They decided to move forward in order to save the show, but not without making some big sacrifices. That's when things started to go badly. CBS didn't give Magnum a proper ending. Instead, they decided to keep the show going for one more season, which led to the famous cliffhanger in the Season 7 finale. But instead of giving fans a strong ending, the show was left open-ended. It was an attempt at something new that didn't work out. Because the network didn't want to end the show, it had a confusing finish that made people want more, but not in a good way. When CBS decided to keep the show going, even though it was clearly falling apart, it seemed like they were more interested in getting as much as possible out of it than honoring its history. And that's when things started to go wrong with the show. When the show was extended without proper planning and clear direction, Season 8 was even more confusing as the network tried to fix things quickly. What did they do, though, to try to fix the damage? Were they able to save the show, or was it too late? The decision to continue into Season 8. After the huge number of angry fans who wanted the show to end, CBS was in a tough spot. Fans were angry and upset about the Season 7 ending because they didn't know what happened to their favorite character, Magnum. Fans didn't just want answers, they had to have them. They were told there would be an end to the story they had been following for 8 seasons. They were instead left with a huge hole in the story that rested on a single unanswered question: was Magnum still alive or dead? Because of the huge backlash, CBS made the surprising choice to revive Magnum P.I. for a shorter 8th season. Giving the show another chance to finish Magnum's story was meant to make fans happy. But there was a catch. It would not be the same. It was too late to fix the harm. Fans were not interested in the story as much as they used to be. The magic that had made Magnum P.I. so popular was beginning to wear off, and it wouldn't be easy to bring it back. There was no doubt that Magnum's resurrection was fake. The first episode of Season 8 tried to make up for the shocking cliffhanger by suggesting that Magnum's near-death experience was all a dream, or even worse, a hallucination. The first episode basically rewrote the last few minutes of Season 7, which took away from the emotional depth the show had built up. Instead of continuing the story in a satisfying way, the show only tried half-heartedly to fix the problems that the risk from the previous season had caused. Magnum wasn't really dead after all. He had just been knocked out and was now asleep, thinking about his life in a way that didn't seem like it belonged in the story. The emotional weight that was there in the Season 7 end, when Magnum's life was in danger, was lost in the change. Magnum's return didn't feel like a strong way to resolve the story. Instead, it felt like a weak, almost casual attempt to hide the tension that the cliffhanger created. There wasn't a real sense of growth or ending. After such a controversial choice, the show's attempt to make everything okay again felt like a broken promise, making the character and the audience forget about the complicated emotional journey that came before. Following fans had hoped for something more, something much more satisfying, after caring about the character for so long. The tone changed a lot in Season 8. The show didn't have the same carefree, fun vibe that it did in earlier seasons. It was replaced by a tone that was much more serious and introspective, as Magnum dealt with personal problems that had never been talked about before. All of a sudden, Magnum's past, his time in the service, and his relationships became the most important things. The character's inner struggle was very different from what the show was known for, which was crazy, exciting action. It felt like these serious, thought-provoking parts of Magnum's story were tacked on, as if the writers were trying to give a character who had already been established in a very different way more depth. Magnum's long-lost daughter Lily was added, which was one of the most important changes. This new plot point was added to the show's last season to make it more emotional, but it was a strange and sudden change. Magnum had always been a bit of a loner, and now he was having trouble with being a dad. This connection felt forced into the story, even though it could have helped the characters grow. Why did this become such an important part of Magnum's life all of a sudden? There wasn't much build-up or reason. Instead, it seemed like it was added to the story just to shock people, without giving it much meaning or resolution. Adding Lily was supposed to give Magnum's character a new focus, but it only showed how the show's final season didn't have any cohesive stories. Along with the changes in his family, Magnum started to think about joining the Navy again. This plot, which was based on his time as a decorated Navy officer, was another attempt to make the character's journey more complex. Magnum was having a hard time deciding whether to go back to the Navy or stay as a private investigator. This seemed to be a reflection of his bigger question of whether he should go back to his old life or accept his new one. His character became more interesting because of this, but it seemed like the show was trying too hard to fix problems from earlier seasons. Fans who had been following Magnum's journey for a long time didn't want a total change to his personality. They wanted the stories they had been invested in to come to an end. Instead, the show kept adding new problems that didn't always make sense in light of what had already happened. But how did fans feel about this rushed revival? Did the show make up for the odd beginning of Season 8? Stay tuned, because we're going to talk about how the show ended and whether or not it satisfied viewers or left them still wanting more. Comparing Magnum P.I. with other iconic TV series. It wasn't just Magnum P.I. fans who were upset when the show stopped. Like other TV shows, this one ended with a choice that was both brave and very controversial. Take Dallas as an example. In 1980, The famous "Who Shot JR" mystery kept people interested. But when the show finally revealed who shot JR, it was just a cheap trick. It wasn't very exciting when the shooter was revealed, and the plot felt like a letdown after all the buildup. Dallas had been building up shock and mystery for years, but it was all over in an instant. People who were fans felt betrayed and angry that there was no payoff at that time. In the same way, the shocking and sudden cut to black in the last scene of The Sopranos, which many people think is one of the best TV shows ever. In the series' end, there was no clear answer to the question of whether Tony Soprano lived or died. Some fans liked how unclear it was, but a lot of them were unhappy that there wasn't a clear ending. People had different opinions on the idea of leaving such an important question open. Some said it would ruin years of storytelling. In the same way, Magnum P.I.'s choice to leave Magnum's fate unclear in the Season 7 finale was an attempt to be brave, but it could turn off fans who had been watching for a long time. Like Dallas and The Sopranos, Magnum P.I. missed a great chance to give fans the ending they were dying for. A lot of people had watched Magnum solve cases, make friends, and grow as an emotional person for a long time. There was a turning point in the character's story, and fans were ready for the last, satisfying episode. Instead, the show finished with a lot of questions, leaving viewers to figure out what happened next in the story. It wasn't just the ending that was bad. The people in charge of the show thought that leaving things open-ended would make it more interesting and suspenseful. The truth is that it did the opposite. It robbed fans of a conclusion that matched the quality of the show and made them feel empty. When you look at other long-running TV shows with similar endings, it's clear that Magnum P.I. didn't do something right. Another example of a show that gained a huge following but didn't have a satisfactory ending is Lost. Many questions were left unanswered in the Lost series finale, which fans who had spent years trying to figure out the show's complicated secrets felt like they were given the easy way out. The problem with Dallas, The Sopranos, Lost, and Magnum P.I. that makes fans unhappy is the same. The shows didn't give fans the ending they had been waiting for years. Now, this is where the end of Magnum P.I. really stands out in terms of TV writing. People learned from this finale what not to do when ending a long-running show. There is a duty on TV shows to respect their viewers' time and give them a sense of end. There needs to be a fitting finish for the characters and the story that fits with the show's tone. It's not enough to just have a shocking twist or an unclear ending. That wasn't done by Magnum P.I. The emotional impact of the Season 7 cliffhanger was lessened by a weak comeback in Season 8, which seemed more like a last-ditch effort to fix things than a real ending. That mistake taught TV writers and showrunners a valuable lesson. Don't leave your viewers hanging without giving them what they want. It's okay to take risks, but you need to be very careful about how you do them. Writers should try to come up with ends that honor the character's journey and bring the main ideas to a close. When used wrong, ambiguity can be dangerous, even when it's useful in other scenarios. It can leave your viewers unhappy if it doesn't add to the story's emotional depth or main idea. One of the most important lessons from the end of Magnum P.I. is how important it is to make fans happy. If shows can keep their viewers' trust and loyalty, they will be repaid with a legacy that lasts. That being said, if a show doesn't live up to viewers' hopes, it could hurt its image. Fans may have loved the show, but the fact that it didn't have a satisfying finish made it disappointing. If you don't give your people the closure they deserve, they might turn away, and it's much harder to win them back after the fact. That's what the ending of Magnum P.I. warns you about. Magnum P.I.'s ending not only let down fans, but it also changed how TV showrunners handled finales in the future. There are now lessons to be learned from Magnum P.I. for anyone who wants to end a popular show. As much action and memorable characters as Magnum P.I. brought to TV, its ending is still a reminder of how important it is to give fans the finish they want. Magnum P.I. and the reboot. After the show Magnum P.I. ended in 1988, a lot of people thought that was the last time they would see the famous private investigator in action. But that wasn't the end of Magnum's history. Fans kept watching the show even after it stopped airing during prime time thanks to reruns and syndication. This show, called Magnum P.I., came back to TV and still draws people who either missed it the first time or found it years after it ended. The show left a lasting impression on culture. It became a standard, a beloved throwback to simpler, more exciting times on TV in the 1980s. The reruns helped make Magnum a well-known name, and the show's impact could not be denied. People who watched Magnum P.I. as kids were now showing it to kids their own age. The mustache, the red Ferrari, and the Hawaiian shirts. These became iconic images of the show that went beyond TV sets. This is how Magnum has been for a long time. With his mix of humor, excitement, and depth, he was able to connect with new fans, even after the show ended. And with each new year, Magnum P.I. stayed a beloved part of pop culture. Then there was the 2018 start over. In order to bring Magnum P.I. back to life, CBS chose to cast Jay Hernandez as the famous Thomas Magnum. Even though the reboot was based on the original, it had to find a way to honor the old show while also meeting the needs of current viewers. It wasn't just about bringing back the magic of the first show. It was also about making Magnum feel new and current, while still staying true to what made the character and the show so great in the first place. Some big changes were made to the 2018 version of Magnum. The character was now a former Navy SEAL who had just come back from Afghanistan, which made the story more modern for the viewers. This change brought Magnum's past up to date, so that it fits with modern military and action heroes. It also made him feel more in touch with the present day. Also, the reboot added a wider range of characters. For example, Perdita Weeks played Higgins as a former MI6 spy, which was different from the male version of the character. These changes were made so that the show's plot and characters would fit in with today's times without losing what made the first one great. But fixing the mistakes made in the 1988 ending might have been the hardest part of the reboot. The reboot didn't directly address the show's controversial finish, but it did avoid making the same mistakes. There was no doubt about what would happen to the main character. Magnum's journey in the reboot was clear, planned, and looked to the future. The show knew how important it was to have a satisfying ending and for characters to grow, having learned from the first series' shortcomings in these areas. The reboot found its own voice by mixing humor, action, and new ways of telling stories, while still paying homage to the spirit of the first movie. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And be sure to click on the next video popping up on your screen for more awesome content.